and just really wanted to focus on our two guests, Caroline Smith and Margaret Lee today, and hand it over to Heather, who's going to be driving us through this little exciting journey today. So thanks, Heather, for driving.
Oh, my pleasure. I definitely prefer to drive, so thank you for passing it right over. Well, I am excited to welcome everyone to our monthly youth mentor call here at Conscious Capitalism, Connecticut chapter, and we are honored to have Caroline Smith and Margaret Lee, who are the co-directors of Collab, which is a community-centered accelerator for Connecticut's entrepreneurs and project builders. Before Collab, they were both the co-director of marketing at C-Click Fix, a civic technology company that connects citizens with their local communities. Ladies, thank you so much for joining. We have a great schedule planned for today. We're going to go through a little presentation, and then we're going to open it up for just an amazing discussion for today. So ladies, without wasting any time, I'm going to pass it right to you. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm so excited for the community to meet you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Heather, and the rest of the Conscious Capitalism team. It's great to see some faces that I don't know, and then some familiar faces. Of course, Lindy, it's so good to see you, and Eleanor, so good to see you. Eleanor's a mentor in our mentor network and has just been with Collab for a long time. And then Lindy is just a personal advisor and mentor for us, for me and Margaret. So just so excited to see both of you. And so excited to be here today on this rainy New Haven afternoon. We'd love to spend just a little bit of time kind of looking under the hood of Collab and our mission and our values and our vision for our work, as well as show you all some key strategic initiatives that we're really excited about and we're working on right now. And then happy to open it up for conversation and discussion and get your all's thoughts. So I'm going to first share my screen. Great. So a lot of you may be familiar with Collab, but we just want to talk a little bit about our mission and our heart and what drives us in this work. Collab's mission is to provide entrepreneurs with impactful, rigorous business support using a compassionate, fundamentally heart-centered approach so that they can build good businesses, build and create economic power, and really shape their communities as leaders of their neighborhoods for themselves and for their families. And for us, we really prioritize serving people of color and women, particularly Black and Latinx entrepreneurs who face persistent and significant barriers because of structural racism and sexism. Here's a little bit of look at our programs. We do a lot of different programs to serve early stage entrepreneurs, and you can kind of see it forms a funnel. We do events for entrepreneurs to kind of build a culture around entrepreneurship. These are free quarterly events that focus on everything from business fundamentals, like the basics of how to build a business plan, to more panel storytelling events like immigrants in entrepreneurship or young people in entrepreneurship or faith in entrepreneurship, to again build the stories and show all the different faces of folks who are building viable, wonderful businesses right here in New Haven. Second, we do one-on-one coaching with entrepreneurs through our office hours program. These are free 30-minute sessions with directly Collab staff, open to any entrepreneur to get some free guidance and advice. We do it on Thursdays and Fridays. We used to do it at the New Haven Free Public Library, but since COVID, we've gone fully virtual. Next, we have the Pre-Accelerator. We'll be talking about this program a little bit more. It's one of our newest programs. It's a 5 to 6 week program to support entrepreneurs in building viable business ideas. Again, we'll talk a little bit about the history of this new program later on, but we're really, really excited. In fact, had our first cohort of this start about a month ago, and then our second public cohort of this start a couple days ago. So we're really excited about this new program. And then lastly, at the bottom of the funnel, is our accelerator program. This is our flagship program, our bread and butter, a 12-week cohort-based program that provides educational curriculum for entrepreneurs, one-on-one weekly coaching, mentorship, and a lot more. And as a part of all of these programs, we provide childcare and transportation and interpretation services. And most recently during COVID-19, in partnership with the library, rental hotspots and laptops to make sure that every entrepreneur can be successful while they're working with us. Here's a look at who we serve and who's in our programs. In 2020, 93% of the ventures we served were people of color, and 77% of the ventures we served were women. Here's a bit of a breakdown of what that looks like. And here are some of our ventures. I think we're so proud to have served just such a broad range of ventures, everywhere from nonprofits to for-profits, at all different parts of the journey of early stage entrepreneurship. I think something that's really personally special for us, especially doing this work in Connecticut and also in New Haven, is that so many of these ventures are our neighbors, are our friends, are our fellow community members. I can walk down the street and go get a vegan Philly cheesesteak from Vegan Ahava's food truck, or go to Havenly Treats and get some delicious baklava, and it's right down the street from me. And I think that's just so special about doing work in a place, and in a place that we love. And then lastly, before moving into our strategic initiatives, we're really, really proud of the progress of our ventures, even through COVID-19. They've been so resilient and so strong during such a turbulent and confusing time. Here are some of our numbers of our ventures have hit just over $4 million in revenue generated, a little under $2 million, $1.7 million in follow-on funding. So that's investments, grants, loans, and also are supporting 178 jobs. That's full-time, part-time, and part-time consultants. We're also really, really proud that our entrepreneurs are excited to be a part of our program and love recommend it to others. A big part of our outreach methodology is through our entrepreneurs and them spreading the word to other entrepreneurs that they know. And so really proud that they would recommend Collab to fellow entrepreneurs, and 91% of our ventures are still active, still operational, still working in some way, shape, or form on their venture. And we're just so proud of, again, their resilience during this time.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. And we wanted to share with you some of our core initiatives. This isn't listed on our website or anything like that. And we just wanted to take a little bit of time to invite you in to some of the biggest things that we're working on right now, and give you a sense of what we're working on. So the first thing is what we're calling Collab Advanced. And this is, based on our knowledge that entrepreneurship support doesn't end after the 11 weeks that we work with individual ventures in our current program. So we've partnered with Social Venture Partners Connecticut and McKinsey to provide additional support after that 11-week period. Folks need all different kinds of support, but we wanted to be really specific about what kind of support. So we've engaged the LSOM in doing a needs assessment of some of our slow growing but high potential ventures to see what additional supports would be helpful for them. Based on that, we hope to adapt our current curriculum and also inform an additional 3-module program that is open to all alums to take them to the next level. And we really want this piece of what we do to address 3 main pain points that we uncovered in our assessments. The first is what we call business self-awareness and market research. The second is understanding their financial story through reporting and modeling. And the last thing is what we call business intuition or strategic decision making. And so we're really excited about where this can go and how this can additionally support our growing community of 100+ entrepreneurs and ventures still going at it. The second initiative we wanted to share is about creating a continuum of support. We can do as much as we possibly can to provide our entrepreneurs with everything that they need, but could we partner with other exciting entrepreneurship support organizations in this community to provide a different level of support together? One thing we wanted to highlight is an organization called Next Haven. They are an amazing initiative in the Dixwell neighborhood on Henry Street, led by the artist Titus Kafar. They have an artist fellowship as well as a co-working space. They're interested in providing entrepreneurship programming. And we really envision partnering with them to create sort of a high quality, physically centralized continuum of support with them. So can Collab be in that space, activating that space, having an office where all different kinds of people can come into that space and feel like they can own it and be a part of it? Can we develop joint programming with them, and whether that's bridge programming, additional programming, events, etc.? Can we tell the story of a partnership like this as an exciting possibility for what we can do for inclusive entrepreneurship together that we can't do alone, and attract different kinds of resources, partners, programs, etc., to that sort of vertically integrated physical space? And in addition to Next Haven, of course, we have so many other amazing partnerships. We run a food business accelerator with City Seed. We want to partner with the city of New Haven as well to make sure that our referral programs are really, really robust and that we're doing some good public programming together. And we've had a strong partnership with the New Haven Free Public Library as well to combine our efforts to bringing people into the ecosystem and onto the front lawn. Third is what we call top of funnel. So, you know, the two things that I just talked to you about. So Collab Advanced as well as the continuum of support is really about the bottom of this funnel, right? What happens when ventures get to a certain point and they need advanced resources? How do we make sure that they get the funding and the supports they need? The top of the funnel work is really about how do we give as many people as possible a chance to eventually take advantage of those higher levels of resources. Let's get more people in the door. Let's build this ecosystem broader, wider, and deeper here in New Haven. And so this initiative is really about serving more people. And a few things, a few ways that we're going to accomplish this. First is doing more neighborhood-based programming. So taking some of our really lightweight programs like office hours and events and making them neighborhood specific and taking a real sort of sidewalk level approach to how we do outreach in this city. The second is expanding what we call the Collab Access Network. This is a network of, I think at this point, 65 or so organizations, institutions, community groups who help us spread the word about our programs. Can we expand that? Can we bring more people into that network? The big part of this, though, is that pre-accelerator that Caroline mentioned. This is a lighter weight 5-week program really designed to get folks situated in entrepreneurship, whether they have an idea or not. Cover some entrepreneurship and business basics, talk about what it means to come up with a good business plan, get some soft skills under our belts, and so that they can apply to the accelerator, so that they can continue to take steps forward in their journey. And we've been doing this in partnership with other organizations. So one with New Haven Healthy Start, which is an organization that works with families in the New Hallville and Dixwell neighborhoods around infant mortality and maternal health. And we're going to do a cohort with their constituents, one with the City of New Haven Department of Cultural Affairs for sort of creatively inclined entrepreneurs, one on our own that we're calling Groundwork, and we've also partnered with United Way of Greater New Haven to be able to offer Groundwork with New Haven public schools, public high schools this summer. And lastly is what we call Heart Ethos curriculum. And this is really, as you can probably tell, really close to our hearts. You see a quote at the top there by one of our entrepreneurs, Della, who is an amazing, amazing graduate. And she once told us that half the battle is emboldening entrepreneurs to believe in their idea, to believe in themselves, to believe that they can do it is actually a really tangible and concrete value add that we provide entrepreneurs by saying, yes, you can. Here are some of the beginning tools you need to do it. Let's talk about how you're feeling today. Let's talk about what you're bringing into this room. We've always done this, talked about our values and our emotional wellness just organically, but we're really excited about codifying this, making it a little bit more research-based and bringing in some expertise in how we help people think through their purpose and think through where they're at emotionally. We've partnered with the Lynch School of Education and Human Development at Boston College. There's a researcher there named Dr. Liang, who is doing some really amazing research around how to help young people uncover their purpose. And, you know, she has a psychology background. And so we want to see, you know, from her research, what can we adapt? What can we implement in our program so that we serve our entrepreneurs better emotionally as well? So those are our initiatives, and we wanted to just give you this sort of inside look behind the scenes to give you a sense of, you know, what are we up to right now, and would be really curious to hear your reactions and questions, and we can kind of have an open discussion.
Well, that's fantastic, Margaret and Caroline. Thank you so much for going through everything. It's just extraordinary what you two young ladies have been able to accomplish during your time. And what I wrote down right here before we kind of open up to the group, and this is very interactive as well, so please feel free to unmute and just kind of jump right in. This is the community that we've worked hard to build over the years. But I wrote down the quote from Della about half the battle is emboldening entrepreneurs to believe in their idea. It really, really hit really hard for me as we start to talk about our mentors and the people that we value in our life. So often they have, their hero's journey, their journey to actually get them to where they are. And the more ups and downs, the bumps and bruises, what I have found are the most interesting stories. So as we really start to explore your organization and you as individuals, I would love for you guys to share with the community a little bit about your journey and really your interest and your idea to start Collab and how you've gotten like right here, right now with us as a way to maybe open up the discussion. That would be okay with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, thank you for the question, Heather. And also, hi, Marna. Good to see you. I feel like we've been friends on Twitter for, I feel like, many years now.
Don't hold that against me.
No, no.
Sometimes I tweet late at night.
No, I love it. Congratulations on your new grill. I think I remember seeing that a couple months back and being like, that's a really impressive grill. So anyway, very good to meet you. But yeah, no, thank you so much, Heather, for asking that question. I feel like, obviously so much of the story of Collab is tied to the story of me and Margaret and kind of our love of this city. And so I'll touch a little bit about that. I think we could touch each on our sort of personal stories and then talk a bit about the history of Collab as well. So I grew up in Kentucky, came here for school at Yale as an undergrad, and I fell in love with New Haven really, really fast. I fell in love with New Haven because it was, I fell in love with a person here, built a lot of friendships here, and just very, very quickly felt very, very connected, I think as a young person, as a 17-year-old, to the city around me. To the community meetings, to the different efforts and initiatives, and just how alive the city felt. I was so attracted to that as a young person and got lucky enough to be able to stay here after I graduated. And after I graduated, I was working for a local startup called Seek Click Fix, which was actually founded by a Yale New Haven team of people at the time, and was doing a lot of community work and community organizing, and was building a lot of relationships over years. Some of the people that we work with at Collab are people that I've known since I was 17 years old when, I was able to stay here over the summer. And then I met Margaret, and I'll let Margaret tell sort of her end of the story of coming to New Haven. And then Margaret, if you want to also share kind of the beginnings of a Collab and how we started this a few years back now.
Sure, of course. So it's funny, I'm also from Kentucky. I didn't know Caroline until, and I also went to Yale, but I didn't know her until we both graduated. During my time at Yale, I did my thing, I studied, I did extracurriculars, but didn't really engage a lot in New Haven. And I was lucky enough to get a job at the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute, which is now called the Sci Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale, running a lot of student and faculty programming, mentoring a lot of early stage ideas, like trying to create a culture of entrepreneurship within Yale's walls. I was always really interested in social entrepreneurship and created a program for social entrepreneurs, and then met Caroline and started to really get involved in New Haven. And I was already at that point really falling in love with this place. I mean, I've been here at this point the longest out of any city I've ever lived in my entire life. And, I love it here. It's such a great city of amazing people who are willing to fight for it and speak up and to build real beauty and projects they care about. And I've learned so much here. And born out of that love and our relationship, Caroline and I started running an event series for a year or so, where we were bringing together Yale students and other college students, New Haven residents, all of these people who are becoming our friends and neighbors. And we did sort of a human-centered design process with them over the course of the year. Like, we brought up community problems and we would kind of like workshop them together, ideate around solutions. We didn't call it human-centered design, but that's what we were doing. And it was an amazing experience. And one thing that really stood out to us was people were coming to us saying like, hey, like, what's next? This was like an amazing 2 hours. I've loved being here. I have this idea that I actually want to implement. Like, can you help me? Or can you help me figure out where to go? And we looked at sort of the landscape of services. There were a lot of events. There was quite a bit of funding, but we wanted to create sort of a 12-week, right, like a cohort-based program where people can come together, walk through a weekly curriculum together, build community together, kind of recreate those events that we were running, but do it within the lens of how do we actually make these projects happen. And so we were able to combine sort of my experience at Yale and Caroline's knowledge of New Haven, and we started our first cohort back in 2018. Specifically with inclusion and equity, not as a nice to have, but as the core reason why we're doing this, and asking a bunch of questions of entrepreneurs. Why haven't you taken advantage of other resources? What's keeping you back from really realizing your dreams? And think there were a lot of psychological, logistical, financial barriers standing in the way. And so we wanted to do everything that we can to make sure we could lower those barriers as much as possible, which is why we focus on things like Heart Ethos, or we provide wraparound services like childcare and transportation and interpretation services to make sure that anybody can be a part of our programs. And so it's been a great experience since. I mean, you know, at this point, we've served about 85 ventures. We know hundreds of people, hundreds of new entrepreneurs in the city, touched over 1,000 folks through our office hours programs, and created really amazing, substantial organizational partnerships. And we're really proud of the work that we've done so far.
You have a lot to be proud of. And I'll tell you, I love falling in love with New Haven, because I've already began to fall in love with both of you, but wow, I'm falling in love with Collab. It's just an amazing organization. I'm just interested, it's the last question. I promise I'll be quiet because I do want to hear from everyone else joining us today. But what was the number one reason that people were sharing with you what was holding them back from kind of following their dreams?
That's a beautiful question and an important question, Heather. I think it wasn't one thing. I think it was definitely multiple things. Starting with the intuitive ones, I think logistical barriers, right? Sometimes simple stuff, things like, hey, I have a kid. I can't go to a workshop in the middle of the day. I'm working multiple jobs. I don't have a car and need money to be able to take the bus. I don't speak this language that this pamphlet is in, and you know, maybe Spanish or Arabic is my primary language, and therefore I can't access these programs. So really logistical, but like critically logistical barriers. And then financial barriers. And I think financial is another way of saying risk, sort of limitations on being able to take risks. You know, I think there's entrepreneurship, the pathway of entrepreneurship is accessible. Entrepreneurship is hard for anybody, but it is accessible if you have the familial and the friendship, or the sort of invisible networks that exist if you have privilege, if you have access to those resources. And a lot of the entrepreneurs we work with don't have that, and don't have that to fall back on. Can't, you know, take time off to explore an idea and validate it over time. And you know, that's what Collab's trying to replicate, is those invisible networks that exist for entrepreneurs who have access to that privilege. But I think most primarily, and this goes back to Margaret's point about Heart Ethos, such a big barrier was much more emotional, much more psychological, was about sort of limiting beliefs that individuals have about themselves. Now, what's interesting is that's individual, right? Individual limiting beliefs about themselves. Of course, individual beliefs about ourselves are really tied to systemic issues, right? When we think about, you know, who are the entrepreneurs that we see, who are celebrated, who are the billionaires that exist in the world, so many of them are white men. And there are real and tangible barriers to starting something for people of color and women. And so those limiting beliefs are rooted in emotions and in individuals, and are also rooted in systemic challenges. But I think a huge you know, challenge we ran into is individuals who said, you know, I have a drive, I want to start something, but am I an entrepreneur? Is that me? We felt that with each other, you know, as young women of color starting this, you know, do we belong in the economic development space? Do we belong in conversations around entrepreneurship? And so much about our work and so much about our theory of change is, of course, providing tangible business supports and teaching folks how to start a business plan or write a business plan or make financial projections. But the harder, less tangible stuff is about people's fundamental belief in themselves, their sense of fundamental worthiness, and their love of themselves. And that we believe correlates with success of entrepreneurship. And that's why we teach it.
Wow, absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. It's just amazing work. But I want to hear from our community. We are a community of a lot of entrepreneurs who really believe in, taking into account all stakeholders with decisions. And I'm sure we have a lot of stories in the room to share about our entrepreneurial experience, but I'd love to open the conversation up as well and start a dialogue. So please feel free to unmute and jump in as your heart pulls you to do so. And Myrna, I can't wait to see this grill, by the way. You just let us know when you'd like to have us over.
We replicated this grill from when I lived in Argentina. So it's a Argentine bracero. It like cranks, goes up and down. It's cool. Over wood fire. Everything's better over wood. I do have one question, and I'm sorry if I missed it. I got tied up on the trying to call in. How do you guys make money with what you do? I mean, it seems like you're like matchmakers, but who's paying you? How are you guys? How is the business making money to keep funding itself, and keep you guys funded personally in this process?
Yeah, so we are on track to become a 501c3. So donations to us are tax deductible. So we rely on individual champions who really love this work and want to support it financially. We rely on foundations and the governments to make this work possible.
Okay.
I have a question. It kind of builds on Heather's question before. But clearly you both have had great role models somewhere along the way. I'm curious as to who some of your influences and who your role models were that you were looking up to. And if you had any entrepreneurs in your life when you were young that you were looking up to and you were like, that's what I want to do. That's the path I want to go. I want to make that possible for other people. Whether that you knew them personally or whether they were like just people out there in the news or whatever.
I can take a stab at that question. I think I have a lot of. I think I'm very blessed to have some really great mentors. I think growing up, I don't know if I had any mentors who were entrepreneurs, and I wonder if this will resonate with you, Margaret, actually. So I'm half Korean and Margaret's full Korean. And I think my mom, so my mom grew up in a very tiny village in South Korea. She was very poor and really like education and going to school and really excelling at school, especially with the guidance of one particular teacher who really believed in Sung-hee Kim, my mom. She was able to become a school teacher, which at the time was like the highest sort of occupation for a woman in Korea at the time. And then my mom, so courageous she was like, I can see the path ahead of me as a woman in Korea at that time. I want something different for myself. I want higher education. And she actually couldn't she had less access to schools in Korea because of limitations on how women could grow at the time. And so she came to the United States. And I think for her, because growing up, education was so tied to survival, for her was so tied to security and stability. A lot of my influences in my life growing up were about education as that means for stability. So obviously my mom really drove me to go to a school where she felt like it could provide me with stability. So I feel like a lot of the people that I admire growing up were in academia. And that was really associated with me with what it meant to be safe and secure and stable. So entrepreneurship, my mom was like, you should use track over basketball because track is a less, risky like sport. I think entrepreneurship didn't feel alive in me. That's why, sometimes I say, I think I never imagined starting something. That just was never a part of my thinking. I think in so many ways because of how I grew up. But I think that I have other kinds of mentors now. And And I do think entrepreneurship or starting something matches with sort of a lot of the elements of my personality that differ from my mom and differ from my mom's sort of stability oriented and reducing risk oriented kind of mentality. But I'd be curious, first of all, Margaret, I'd be curious your reflections on that, if that resonates, and then of course curious your answer to the question as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my mom is also a huge role model for me in a different way. So, you know, for her, she also grew up really poor and, you know, struggled in school and always, you know, she would always talk about how she read Nietzsche when she was in high school back in Korea. So one of the only things that she had access to growing up, because one day her older brother came back with a bunch of English or Western world classic books, and so she had a set of books for that. She had this random secondhand encyclopedia set that he had also brought home, and so she was always sort of her heads were often in the clouds, and she didn't really want to focus in school, and you know she had to skip a grade and really struggled with that. And so her form of perseverance has really been emotional. I think she's really had to go through some of the real ups and downs of trying to survive as a Korean woman in the 70s and 80s, and finding herself, you know, as an immigrant because her husband moved to the US, and leaving her family and her language and all of those things, and finding herself in this foreign place. And then, you know, 20 years later, getting divorced from that husband, and suddenly she's single in this country, totally alone, and what that was like for her and all of the challenges that brought. And she worked as a nurse, and she raised me alone, working at a nursing home and working overtime all the time. And I think just that journey and that story just teaches me so much about resilience, about creativity, about finding joy. She's relentlessly joyful and relentlessly angsty. And I think I learn a lot from that. And I just really think that kind of freedom and authenticity that she uses to approach her life is something that inspires me all the time, and I think is very related to entrepreneurship. And so my mom is definitely an inspiration for me. I think just the class of people that I've always been inspired by are people who take some sort of healing component to the work that they do, no matter what service they're in. And, you know, I can think of, you know, a handful of people here in New Haven who take that sort of approach. And I think a big part of why this Heart Ethos piece is a part of what we do is because of that, and because of the inspiration and the sort of just the soul movement that I feel just seeing other people take that on to say, I really want to see you, I want to feel through this with you. And I really think that this is the root of realizing your potential. I've had that done for me, and I feel like Collab hopefully does that for other people. And so that whole class of people, I feel like, is another sort of role model or inspiration for me.
I love that. Thank you both for sharing that. Awesome stories.
I think it's really beautiful how you both are honoring your mothers as well during this process and this journey. I'm sure they'd be very proud to hear that. That's fantastic. How about you, Allie? What about you? Any questions for Margaret or Caroline?
Just trying to think. Is there any, I was just thinking, are there any stories of entrepreneurs that you've worked with that really stuck out, or just moments that you had with these entrepreneurs that you can think of that really stand out throughout your work?
Definitely. I can start because this is a little brag on Margaret. So actually Della's story I think is really, really wonderful. So Della, who gave that quote that you wrote down, Heather, Nestle, I'll actually put it in the chat. Nestle is a was her venture, and it's a sort of design startup that aims to sell lactation stations for workplaces, to build more equitable workplaces. And then she also pivoted during COVID-19 to sell like really beautifully designed hand washing stations for public schools and other public spaces. Della is an architect, really talented architect, has worked for like Levi's and and Yale and other institutions, but that had this drive because of her experience as a young mother in workplaces to make sure they were safe and conducive to all kinds of bodies and all kinds of lifestyles. This is a brag on Margaret, because Della was like, I think I want to create this startup that creates lactation stations. She signed up for office hours. She sat down with Margaret. She's told this story before, and I think, and Margaret, maybe you can tell the story better than I can. I'm sure you can. I think she literally came to you and was like, I have this idea. Is it crazy? Is it crazy? Is it bad? Is this without any legs? And I mean, you could finish a story maybe, Margaret, but like you were like, yes, I think it does. And more than anything, I think you believed in her and her potential and the idea, but it was her as an entrepreneur and the idea based upon her lived experience and her actual professional expertise. And Della has been tremendously successful. I think she's making hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue. She brought on a CEO, Stephanie Bombs, who you all may know. She's local, who's an amazing support. They have so many options for where they could go next, and just a tremendously successful early stage entrepreneur. And I think I love Della's story because we meet entrepreneurs at all different stages. Sometimes they're more established, sometimes they're really early on. Della was literally just at idea, and then now has made so much progress, and it just feels so special to have been along the way for her journey.
Oh, what a beautiful story. Allie, thank you so much. I love to hear Allie's voice during these. Allie, along with Christia and all the team at Red Rock, have been such an integral part in getting this youth mentor program off. But to have Allie's voice and her age really in here, it's really been such a joy and really a pleasure to work with. So Allie, thank you for jumping in and letting us hear your voice along the way.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I feel like my generation there's more entrepreneurs out there running their own business. It just seems like a lot of it is moving towards like social media and like influencer type things, which aren't always like the most purpose-driven type jobs. And I don't know, it's just nice to see that there's a place that people can go when they want to take that like more traditional route of like starting a business, like a brick and mortar even type business, or just like a not like as influencer type role type entrepreneurship, that there's a place that they can go to. I wish there was, some of that everywhere.
Well, the beauty of technology is, these girls, Caroline and Margaret and Collab, can be anywhere, right? It's amazing, how much we've expanded our reach. Eleanor, I saw that you unmuted. Did you have a question or
I
comment?
did. Thanks, Heather. I was going to just chime in with a comment that came through the chat, which is one of a cohort member, it looks like, Rebecca Mead, who has done work with the Muse and in Middlesex County, Middletown, who just wanted to thank the speakers for their stories and strategy model. And I guess right along following up on your observation and Allie's, that, this could, having an entrepreneurial body like this could really be as common as a library with the collective, will and imagination. Are there like national networks that you're plugging into to try to spread this? Or, I mean, it's sort of handcrafted as an artisan would, to nestle into its place here, but yet I'm sure others are doing it all over too. But I just wondered what kind of forums you're talking in nationally for this kind of thing to really be very much more common, which it hopefully will.
Yeah, cool question. In terms of national engagement, we've worked with an organization called Forward Cities before. We've worked with a little bit with some of their initiatives with the Kauffman Foundation, which is a national sort of entrepreneurship foundation. And so we've had some, and like Caroline went to their conference to kind of learn about their model of like creating inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystems. And so we've kind of like started to reach out to different parts of the country to learn more about how ecosystems are put together and what kind of supports exist for entrepreneurs, especially Black, Brown, and women entrepreneurs. So I think that's really true, but I'm really, really struck by your description, Eleanor, of sort of like the artisan, like handcrafted nature of Collab and its role here in New Haven. I think that's really spot on. I think we wouldn't be who we are without the very unique local nature of what we do. Literally, I mean, like Eleanor, you're a great example of this. Just the relationships that we have in the city and like how long we have them. I mean, we've known you for 4+ years at this point, and you know, we've known Glenn for a long time because we were at the Grove together. Like all of these little connections really make Collab what we are, and so is a big part of our model. You heard about the 65 ventures or organizations in our Collab Access Network who help us spread the word. Our Mentor Network is here rooted in New Haven, if not Connecticut. And so I think you're really, really right about that. And whenever we've thought about what it means to bring Collab or the work that we do to another place, it's always had to, and this is still true, was true, it's always had to retain that kind of craftsmanship wherever it is. So what does it mean for something like Collab to be artisan handcrafted for Bridgeport? What does it mean for it to be artisan handcrafted for Hartford or Oakland or New Orleans? And who needs to create that? Where do we add value in the creation of that? You know, if we were to spread, it would take a lot of money, and we own that because we believe in this model of the handcrafted nature of our model. Like we believe that this upfront cost, it's more expensive, right? To really get to know a city, to hire people from that city, to spend time building relationships and slowly crafting something that really fits into the ecosystem of that city. But we think it's worth it because we think that has longer term positive effects. We think that has all different kinds of better outcomes for the entrepreneurs we serve. And so we've always been really sort of like hesitant / cautious about what it means to grow. And I think right now where we're at is like, can we make Collab exciting enough that people want to come here? We already work with people from outside of New Haven, but we're only open to folks in Connecticut, but maybe more people we could engage in our programming in some way. So we've been thinking a little bit about that, but I feel like I'm really leaving with the gift of describing it in that way, Eleanor, because I think it's like giving me a lot of vocabulary to talk about, because we've talked about this before, but I love that. And I think I'll use it again.
Thanks. Yeah, it strikes me that the long-term relationships is a shorthand for trust, really, and how trust can be that kind of shock absorber to help, accept a higher level of risk that someone might not have, the family background to feel like there's a safety net, but in their network, on the sidewalk level, if they make a mistake, it's not going to lead to ruin.
I have one last question. So of all the entrepreneurs that you're working with so far, are there any that express doubt about either creating or expanding and even staying in Connecticut? And how do you help them work through that?
Interesting. I'd be curious what you think, Caroline. We haven't really encountered that in any substantial amount. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs who aren't necessarily at a place in their lives where they're trying to decide where to be. They this is their home. Like they grew up here, their family and friends are here, they went to school here, they own a home here. And so I think we've really, I don't know if that's a self-selection, right? But we haven't necessarily had a lot of experiences sort of helping folks think through whether to stay in Connecticut or leave. Would you agree with that, Caroline?
I think that's right. It's kind of like a couple thoughts. It reminds me of I think something that's important to us, which is like we're in different conversations around how to retain young people. I think in part because we're young people who stayed here, and I think that will and should be always part of the conversation around economic development. I think part of the underlying premise of Collab, and I think our heart is like, what about the individuals who are already here, who don't need to be convinced to be here, who want to live and thrive here, and how do we activate and nurture and support that talent that already exists? We kind of think about, like, we get really inspired by New Haven Promise, for example, as a model, and we're like, are we the entrepreneurship sort of portion or version of New Haven Promise, or New Haven Works, all these different programs that we think are really tremendous at supporting talent that's already here. So I think that's sort of the premise. I think that's why we don't run into that issue as much, Marna. That being said, one other addendum I would put on there is we do serve Yale Ventures and university ventures in our program. And I think something that we notice is the Yale Ventures that we do serve, for example, are young people typically who are specifically intrigued to start something here, which I think is a really exciting place for Yale Ventures and Yale students to land. Like if they want to start something, they want to live here, how do they build something thoughtfully in the city? I think we have a role to play in supporting those students or those faculty or folks who are affiliated with different institutions here, who came here for an institution, potentially at first temporarily, but then kind of similar to us, fell in love with this place. I think there's a place to land for us with them.
Thank you.
Well, it's not out of place to wish Marna the best on her entrepreneurial venture, starting Marnaroon's macaroon cookies coming up in the farmers markets this summer.
Oh my
Very
gosh.
cool. Very
Wow.
awesome.
I would want one right now. That sounds great.
Well, I can assure you, if you've taste tested as many as me, you have a nice round macaroon belly at the moment.
With true Argentinian dulce de leche.
Dulce de leche.
There you go. Thank you.
Well, that is fantastic. One last question as we are rounding out the last couple minutes. Caroline and Margaret, how can we, Conscious Capitalism Connecticut chapter, support you and continue to support you with the goals, your personal goals and the goals of Collab?
Thanks so much for that question, Heather. I mean, you all already are. So I think first and foremost, I think we get really excited about just being thought partners together. It sounds like, and it feels like just that we have a lot of values that are really aligned. And I think, I guess it's inherent in our name, Collab, but we are built off relationships and partnerships. So I'm not sure all the different ways that could look, but just excited for more continued conversation and connection and coalition building with you. Other ways that we can be supportive. I mean, Margaret mentioned that we are built off of champions who support us financially. That helps us expand our programs, deepen our support. Two, we are, folks like Eleanor are mentors for our ventures, which is so tremendous to have individuals who are willing to sit down, have 1, 2, or more conversations with our businesses, meet them right where they are. Eleanor does an amazing job of that.
It's so fun.
Yeah, she's amazing. You've mentored women's work, right? As one that comes to mind. Yeah, just such a good fit. So if, spreading the word about becoming advisors for our entrepreneurs and also advisors for us, Margaret and I think, what's made us at least, pretty successful so far is I think because we've had mentors in our life who have pushed us, challenged us, made Collab better. So folks who can be advisors for us is tremendous. And then lastly, just being cheerleaders for our ventures, right? Purchasing their products, going to pitch day. I'll put the link in the chat for pitch day, coming and just cheering these folks on who are trying something brave and audacious. And it's just a great way to also feel, I think, connected to New Haven. So I'll put the link to pitch day in the chat. It's virtual. And we also have another upcoming event that I'll put in the chat as well. We have a event with Arts and Ideas around reimagining economies that Margaret is going to be facilitating and moderating, that I'll put in the chat. So coming to our events and cheering our entrepreneurs on is very special.
Oh, we love it. Absolutely. Before I pass it to Glenn, a special thank you for joining today. And thank you for being mentors, not only a youth mentor, but you've really kind of blown the doors off of that. I mean, you are mentors for entrepreneurs and for women and for the future of our business. So thank you so much for living and breathing the principles of conscious capitalism, something that's near and dearest to all of our hearts. But before we wrap up, Glenn, I saw you unmute. I wanted to pass it back in case we have any special announcements.
Thanks. I've so enjoyed this hour, just hearing your stories, Carol and Margaret. You've really touched so many people that are underserved in this community in a very thoughtful and profound way. And even though I've known you at a distance for many years, just sitting and listening to your journey today was really, really moving. So thoughtful and so well considered as to where you put your energy, and the results you're getting are absolutely off the dial. So I would love to continue talking about thought leadership, partnership, as you call it. Eleanor just prodded me in the chat about a lightning talks idea that we've been talking about doing at district for a long time, and I think fall this year might be something that good timing for that. So I'd love to co-produce a live event of some sort with you this year, because we have so much in common in terms of what we want to do with the motivating people to have meaningful lives and using business to do it. So let's leave it there. A great conversation, very thoughtful and really good fun.